Hey YouTube. I realize that in a lot of my videos lately, I have been doing a lot of dehydrating. And some people have, asked, when am I going to start doing more cooking? Because obviously, I eat every day. But the dehydrating is really important for me. So, especially because we have the weather coming up that we're having. It's going to be a rough winter. And I'm very serious about my dehydrating. And as you recall on previous videos, I was dehydrating some collard greens. This time, I have kale. You can tell the difference because kale has these ruffled edges on it, and the collard greens are more flat, and there's a difference in the flavor as well. I already took some of the kale that I have, and I've put it in the dehydrator, so I do have one bunch of kale dehydrating today. Now this I'm just taking off of the stalk and tearing into small pieces and putting it in my dish so that I can soak it in some water and then wash it really good and rinse it a few times to make sure there's no dirt left in the leaves from where it grew. And then tomorrow, after this other bunch of kale is dehydrated, I will probably dehydrate part of this kale that I have here, and the rest of it I'll just cook in a pot on the stove and have with some meat and some other things. Just because I dehydrate food doesn't mean that food has to have no flavor, or that I'm just doing this and I'm never going to eat this food that I'm dehydrating. Because the purpose is to not be wasteful. And don't know where you are, but in America, we waste a lot of food. And there are a lot of hungry people. So it doesn't even equate to me. It doesn't make sense, but we do waste a lot of food. And rather than being wasteful with food, I would rather be mindful of the food that we have and make it last. And as I've said in previous videos, I'm really not a fan of going out and slipping and sliding in the snow. And I live in a snowy place, and I don't mind looking at the snow out the window. But I really am not interested in slipping and sliding out in the snow in the middle of winter, or when there's a snowstorm or whatever, just to get some food. I'd rather be prepared and have what I need. If there's a storm or a power outage, I'd rather know that I have what I need. Especially with power outages, which is why I prefer doing the dehydrated food over freezing everything. And nowadays freezers are so small anyway, how much can you really hold unless you're getting one of those massive size ones that's going to take up your space. And I live in a cozy space, so I prefer to dehydrate my stuff. So it's easy enough to get produce, especially get it while it's fresh, and just do this. But of course, not everybody has a food dehydrator. It can be done in the oven, as I've mentioned before. Set your oven at 200 degrees, and after you have thoroughly washed your vegetables, especially like greens like this, wash it. You can put oil on it if you want to, or if you don't want to, that's fine. Tear it down into smaller bits. Lay it out on a flat tray and put it in your oven and let it bake until it's dried. You know, just like making kale chips, except with the kale chips, you would actually, after you wash it, you pat it dry with some paper towels or something, and you take a little olive oil, rub it on your hands, and then you put your hands in the dish and you massage your greens, your kale or whatever, until it's all thoroughly covered in oil. You don't want it super greasy, but you do want it covered, with oil. Put it in your pan. You can put a little sea salt or regular iodized salt on there and let it dry out in the oven, and it becomes kale chips, and you can eat it like a snack, and it really is good. Believe me, if it wasn't good, I wouldn't eat it. And it's something that even kids can eat, and they might be more prone to eat that because it's more like a treat than to, just eat it if it was cooked as regular greens in a pot. It's all right to switch up the way you present the food to your kids if your kids are not interested in eating it as it comes naturally. Because sometimes kids will look at stuff and say, ooh, I don't want that. But if they see it presented in a different way, they might find it more appetizing, more interesting. You can do the same thing with lasagna. Make a lasagna, add some mixed vegetables or at least some diced carrots and potatoes or whatever mixed in your layers of your noodles with your tomato sauce, maybe even some diced tomatoes in there, some onions. Add your cheese if you want to do cheese with it. Make it interesting. That way, it's not just something to eat, but it's something to eat that tastes good and that's good for you and good for your kids. There's, more than one way to prepare a meal. You can do the same things with a juicer. Taking some of the vegetables, take some of the greens, take an apple, chop the apple into some pieces, put the greens through, put an apple through. You can even pour some beets in there. Put that through. And it becomes a drink that is healthy, nutritious, and delicious. That's just a little something to think about for today. And I will talk to you again soon.